I've actually never attended one of your meetings, but I sure am. I find it really interesting. You're in a warm room here. I'm not hostile to the idea of struggling with the idea of the old HP and how it plays into recovery.
What a relief.
Yeah.
Well, when I approached you about having a meeting here, you said, great, this is a great addition to the Friendship Club.
It is. And I should know this, but I don't. A good lawyer should never ask a question he doesn't know the answer to. It's hybrid, right? People can...
Not any longer.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah, it used to be Zoom, and then we cut that out.
Okay. That whole deal is a work in progress. You know, here at the Friendship Club in Santa Fe, the doors were closed for 14 months. By the way, this is the week of Black Friday from 2020. It was exactly this week 4 years ago that the world shut down.
Ah.
And it was on the 13th, and today we're recording the 8th. And so we came back, and after 14 months of the doors locked here, and almost immediately went Zoom, hybrid. But now it seems like there's sort of a fork in the road, and Zoom meetings are Zoom, and in-person meetings are in-person. That seems to be the way it's shaking out. We have a meeting that's under the umbrella of Friendship Club called Boozers in Bathrobes. That's got hundreds a day. I bet it's the top Zoom meeting.
I know a lot of people who attend that. I've never gone myself, but it seems to be a thronging meeting.
Super popular and really good. I enjoy it. There is a chapter in the big book called We Agnostics, and is that something that plays a big part in the Freethinkers group?
Actually, the consensus on that, it's insulting.
Oh, insulting. Wow. Okay, tell me more.
Well, the chapter starts that, the chapter's about if you come in as an agnostic, you will eventually get it, because that's what happens at the end.
All right.
And that's not where we're coming from.
Okay.
We don't need to get it. We don't have to get it. We don't get it. We're not going to get it.
Oh, I had the wrong idea. I thought it was more all are welcome here, not we're not going to get it.
Well, it's a contradictory blend because they make a lot of noises that all are welcome, but they say, but
who's they?
The authors of the book.
Okay.
The tone is all are welcome. You can come here, but eventually, if you wise up, you'll come to a belief in a higher power, and won't that be nice? And I've been sober for coming up on 42 years. I've been an atheist the whole time.
Fantastic.
And it hasn't happened yet.
I got you. I once had a sponsor who was an atheist. I'm not. And at the beginning of our working together, he said, "There's a couple of things I want to cover here if you're going to ask me to do this. One, I'm an atheist, and I already had quite a lot of time sober, but I really admired the way this guy did everything in life and in the program. I went, no problem on my part." So,
so in the chapter, the guy they illustrate it with came in as an agnostic, and at the end of the chapter, he suddenly changed.
Well, that's okay too, right?
For him.
Yeah.
But a lot of people in the program think chapter 4 is for me. And it's not.
Well, I'm sorry. Clarify that.
I've been told, we have chapter 4 for you. And I said, well, really, it doesn't apply to me at all.
Okay.
So a lot of people have this impression that I'm being spoken to in the big book as an agnostic or atheist.
Okay.
That's simply not the case in people who don't change in that way.
Okay. So what is it you guys do in Freethinkers meetings? How would you describe the way you come at it?
Well, the format would look very familiar to somebody who's gone to any AA meeting. We have readings. Lately, we've introduced a silent meditation as for 8 minutes as part of the group. And then there's usually a reading of the day based on I forget the title of the book.
Well, the new book or the original?
The new book.
Oh, A Secular Sobriety.
Oh, don't know that one. Okay.
We just started reading it.
Yeah. And so it's a blend. I mean, one thing that Jen does a great job of having a variety of sources and readings and resources available. So it it moves around flexibly. And if one thing seems to be working, we do it. And then, if it's less popular, like the Zoom turned out to be more trouble than it was worth, so we
I get that.
set that aside.
Do you do the moral inventory as outlined in the big book, or?
Oh, you mean how do we work the steps?
Sure.
Oh, the steps are very similar, just different wording. And yes, the fourth and fifth have nothing objectionable about it, but there's a few steps in there with the word God and such.
Yep. that freaks a lot of people out when they show
that is tweaked for our ears.
In what way?
And
I don't know, so I'm asking.
Oh.
Well, there's a version of called the Practical 12 Steps. I don't know if we have it handy, where it just has a completely secular wording, so that the first step, admittedly we were powerless over alcohol. It has something like that. We were trapped in a self-defeating cycle of destructive behavior, and
didn't have the tools to.
Yeah. You would remember it better than I. And the second step about came to believe says, realize that we could address these problems through positive actions and change behavior. And the third step made a decision is, committed ourselves to working on this new path. So I was surprised when I first encountered them. I was surprised at how readily they could be adapted.
I think I hear you, and I just happened to listen to. Do you consider yourselves AA?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been for all these years, I've been a happy member of AA. There was a stretch when I didn't go that was more for relationship reasons, but once that relationship ended, I came back every day, and I've been in regular attendance for much of those 42 years.
Gotcha.
When the book and the program went around the world, there's a lot of cultures out there that do not relate to the Christian or the basics of our program. They didn't even have words that related to their culture.
Interesting.
And in Thailand and Sweden, I think Sweden had 7 steps, and Thailand just reworded everything because they don't have, quote unquote, a God of their understanding. They have other entities. Like, I'm not sure, remember it right now, but Bill recognized that and he wrote about it. And he said,
I'm just learning this. What did he say about it?
I'd have to take my phone out and read it.
Oh, okay.
But I mean,
wait a minute. I'm sorry. I did bring my papers.
But one thing that I think was very admirable about Bill is that he, even though he was, very much a Christian, and even his spiritual advisor, Father Dowling, talked him out of converting to Catholicism, which I didn't know.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah, that Father Dowling's point of view is that AA does so much good as a non-denominational organization that if you become a Catholic, it'll be seen as a Catholic organization, and that would be a disaster for AA.
That is a pretty open-minded. I kind of admire that reaction. Yeah. Go ahead.
So in 1953, at the General Service Conference, quote, Bill Wilson said, so the 12 steps themselves were a tremendous variation, not in principle, but in the matter of stating them. Because he was talking about groups in Sweden that had 7 steps, sailors who had 6 steps instead of 12. These pioneering stories are now being reenacted in distant lands, all these variations. In one country, the steps were altered in phrasing, but not in principle. And so the question is, should we say you can't belong to AA unless you use the 12 steps exactly as we have? No. These groups are merely going through the old pioneering process that we have to go through ourselves, he says. We have a tradition that says you can ignore the traditions. So our 12 steps are just a variation. The principles are exactly the same. There's nothing different. It's just the words. When you're an atheist and you come into AA and they start talking God and as you understand him and you don't relate. And some people have had a lot of problems with religion.
Sure.
And even PTSD with religion.
Yeah.
So they're not even
That's
going to,
fair.
they'll walk right out of the room. They see God on the wall. Oh, no, I'm not doing that. And that happened to me.
I see.
When I labeled myself an alcoholic one day, after I stopped trying to drink for every day for 2 weeks, every morning, I'm not drinking tonight, I'm not drinking tonight. We've all been through that, right? I said after a week or two, I said, I must be an alcoholic because I can't stop drinking.
Right.
And that's when I labeled myself. But I'm not going to AA. I'm not going because it's Christian and I'm Jewish, so that doesn't help. And I don't believe in God. So I was averse to attending those meetings.
Sure.
And it was a year and a half later that bad things happened. I was lucky that there was an agnostic meeting down.
Here in Santa Fe?
No.
Okay. Where?
Orlando, Florida.
Oh, okay.
Our mostly agnostic group of drunks. And the acronym for that is OMAGOD, or Oh My God.
Okay. I hate to paraphrase, but the way I read the big book, Bill Wilson, sounds like certainly before he got sober, he felt like organized religion had a lot to answer for, and that there was a lot of BS involved. I mean, it's people probably switching off the show right now when I say that, but that's the way I read it. Is he was pretty steamed at some of the stuff that he'd been.
He definitely flailed around spiritually and was always interested. But I mean, the thing, for all his many flaws, the thing I admire about Bill is, for example, when he first heard about the Oxford group, a very heavily Christian evangelical set of principles. They did that for a while. Then he realized that this was too exclusive, that wasn't going to work. And they expanded it and they added things like God of our understanding.
Right.
And Bill, I think, was always open to a fault to saying, well, how can we get more people in here?
I just listened to a talk Bill gave. It's a recording that he gave in Fort Worth, Texas back in the 50s. If I'm not mixing up my source on what he had to say on some of this, was that, and I get it, okay, I'll go ahead and put my spin on it. He's in Akron, and he's in the upper Midwest, where things are very Christian and very kind of square, 1930s America style. But his pals were back in New York, and there was some AA there, and New Yorkers then and now are New Yorkers. Mm-hmm. And he's, whatever minor adjustments he made to the wording of his original first draft of the 12 steps, you might say, they were like, I think he says some of the more agnostic types, something very close to that wording. He said they balked at on our knees and they're like, calm down, all that stuff, buddy. You need to dial it down. And he's a little vague in the language. Yeah, go.
It was Jim Burwell, the token atheist in the first 100, who twisted his arm.
Back in New York, this was?
To change this, to make the steps more. As he understands God.
Was that to eliminate the on your knees phrase?
That was removed because of Jim Burwell.
I see. Okay, I didn't know that.
And he also,
great.
And all 4 steps that have that kind of sound to them. So God as we understand him came from Jim Burwell. And that's in 3 steps, right?
I think so.
And then the 7th step, get on your knees and ask God to remove all your shortcomings. That was removed. So, yeah. And that was, a debate that went on a bit.
He makes it sound like it was a yelling match.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Well, they often were. And also, I mean, just Bill was a consummate salesman. And so once he got an idea that he thought was good, he would just drive everybody nuts by pursuing it. We're talking about the steps now, but there are all sorts of fads like niacin. Bill thought that niacin was going to be a panacea for alcoholics.
He did.
And for years.
I remember in the 90s, there was a flurry of the niacin rush.
Well, this was back in the
yeah, not in recovery. I mean, just like in the
50s. Well after AA was rolling, and it became a controversy because Bill was promoting niacin on AA letterhead. So he was a flagrant violator of the traditions, and they finally had to rein him in. Or the whole episode with psychedelics,
right,
where many early AA members, Bill included, took tons of psychedelics. And it took a while for them to sort of work through what that meant, what their stance should be. And the irony is now this psychological community is coming around to psychedelics like ketamine and others, is trying to study them in a more credible scientific way, which hasn't been possible for decades.
Right, and I guess lysergic was isolated in the 1940s, and it was not people at a party, getting.
Yeah, it was very different.
Yeah.
In the 50s, Bill was part of the whole, he did acid with Aldous Huxley.
He did?
Yeah.
No.
And there's a guy who was the editor of the 12 and 12 named Tom Powers.
Yeah.
Who was a very devout Christian, and I met Tom and talked to him about this. And he said it was just a real craze for a while in AA, that everybody, including Tom, was taking acid and said, isn't this wonderful? This is going to give everybody a spiritual experience. And eventually they began to sort it out among themselves.
But as we know today, they're using it for depression.
That's right.
Which what a lot of AAers suffer from.
You better believe it.
I want to go talk about Bill, if we could, for a moment. I get a lot of flack, or AA agnostics and atheists get a lot, secularists get a lot of flack, from the general AA community, not calling us real. First, I've heard you're not really an alcoholic if you got sober without God. I couldn't be a real alcoholic because only God could make you.
People say a lot of things.
Yeah.
They also, and also say, as to your very first question to us was, do we consider ourselves AA?
Yeah.
So people do not consider us personally. AA does, but people don't.
Yeah.
If
I had a nickel for every bullshit I've heard in a meeting.
That's true. You'd be welcome.
But, the intergroup online list has a secular, we're on there if you ask to be, I have a meeting, I want to be on your list, okay. And we give them the information. And there's also, not only do they put it on there, which is welcoming, but they also have a secular filter. So not just Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, men only, women only.
Yeah, okay.
They have a secular filter, so that's kind of special. And they also have secular filters on those meeting guides, if you ask. In other words, your central office or your intergroup, depending on what part of the country you're in, they have different. You have to say to them, please list my meeting, and then please list, please add to your filter secular. Here in Santa Fe, it was no questions asked, yes. I heard stories like no in other parts of the country.
Okay.
So it's a struggle sometimes for us. But, if you go to AA.org, we are AA's biggest secret. I mean, I still meet people who've been sober for 20, 30, 40 years, you name it. I've never heard of secular AA. Had no idea. Why? Because AA doesn't, I don't want to use the word promote, but they don't share that information on the website. The only information you can get from them is pamphlet, The God Word, and in it, there's a story that mentions agnostic or atheist meetings, whatever, or secular. I'm not going to remember the wording.
Yeah, I got you.
And it's in one of the 9 stories. That's a lot of research to find AA secular meetings. I mean, right now you can Google secular AA and you can get a list of all of it. But how many people coming in new are going to do that? Very few. They're going to go to AA.org and look for it, and they're not going to find it. If you put secular in, you might get the God Word pamphlet, you might not, but it's very disheartening. So we're here today to basically promote, advertise our program of secular AA, that it's here, we're here for you. For you or someone you love or know who refuses to come into the program because they haven't.
It sure happens. It absolutely, I know for a fact it happens.
And there have been successful Supreme Court cases where an alcoholic who's ordered by the court to attend AA meetings said, but this is a religious program and I'm an atheist. this is a violation of my Second Amendment rights. And they're perfectly correct.
Perfectly correct.
But one point I wanted to make is that at its best, AA in general is very welcoming. One thing I like about the way Jen has set up our secular meeting in Santa Fe is that's also very welcoming. You don't have to be an atheist or an agnostic to attend. As a matter of fact, many have not, just out of curiosity. And it sort of mirrors the best of AA in a way that I think is very powerful.
Well, there are a lot of people who believe in God, but not religious, and they do resent.
No, I'm saying that would be me.
They do resent the religiosity that is shared in the rooms. So if you come to a secular meeting, I mean, you'll be perfectly comfortable there. We talk about getting sober.
Right.
We just don't mention God, but you can. If you say, my higher power, I call God, you're welcome to my meeting. And you could say God helped you stay sober. That's fine too. So the religiosity is totally absent. And I know a lot of people who appreciate that. A lot of God-believing people come to secular meetings because they prefer.
Well, I get that. And did you say the Supreme Court has taken this on?
I believe some of the cases have gotten to the Supreme Court. Only
State Supreme Court.
State Supreme Court.
It was in a certain state that this guy brought this to, and in that state you cannot be remanded to AA because there's other options. There's LifeRing, there's Smart Recovery, there's Recovery Dharma, there's other
of course
places, therapists, whatever their town offers, they can't remand you in that state to AA. And the same thing happened with I think it was United Airlines who remanded their pilot go to AA, and he took them to court.
I see.
And he wanted to go to Recovery Dharma.
Uh-huh.
And they won.
Well, also, I think the issue, this was a lot more of a live issue like 20 years ago, but now there's so many flavors of rehab and recovery options that it's not as stark an issue as it used to be.
I have to be careful here because of the rules of anonymity. How can I put this in a take me out of it way? Alcoholics Anonymous doesn't require people who've been pinched for DWI to come to AA meetings. That is courts and parole officers and probation officers and people like that. So a person will come into a meeting with a piece of paper going, I have to go to 100 meetings. I need to get it signed here. My official position on that is I don't give a shit. Sure, I'll sign that thing for you, but I'm not requiring any. I have nothing to do with any of this stuff. If somebody across the street who works from the government has ordered you to come to this meeting, that is none of my concern, none of my business. If you want my autograph to say you were here at 6 o'clock, I'll do that. But it's easy for the lines to get blurry and make it sound like, we're working that. I'll be clipping that out. I'm clumsily trying to say that, AA is AA and the government's the government, the police are the police, doctors who say you should catch me. That's all.
Yeah, they're all different things.
They're on the other side of the street doing whatever it is they do. People come into AA to catch a meeting and see what AA has to offer and try to get well, maybe.
By the way, back to Jim Burwell for a moment.
Yes.
He's the one who came up with the third edition.
Okay.
The only requirement for membership.
Oh, is that right? Fascinating. Well, that was 15 years after the Big Book was written, and Bill Wilson was a different guy in the 1950s than he was when he had a year sober in 1936, 7. We do 30-minute episodes, and we're running up right against it. So is there anything we didn't cover in this half hour that you'd like to say to somebody this might apply to?
Just one thing I wanted to mention is my way of dealing with my atheism in meetings was to be candid about it, to say, I'm an atheist in AA, I've been sober for years. If you think that can't be done, come talk to me, I'll tell you how I've done it, my attitude. And I figured that was enough. And when I got to this secular Freethinkers meeting in Santa Fe, I realized that my attitude was very limited. And Jen's done a phenomenal job of just pulling together resources, because a great many people have worked on secular recovery in all kinds of ways, and far more actively than I realized. That's a good thing to find out.
Me too. But I've been to a meeting or two in my day. I definitely do know that people who are physically addicted to alcohol, their lives are turning to shit, and maybe they're in legal trouble or marital trouble. They decide to roll the dice on A, and they come in and go, well, can't do that, and walk right out. I know for a fact that happens.
Yeah.
Okay, well, secular AA has been around since 1975. The first meeting was in Chicago. They're still going. And we have our own international conference every couple of years.
You say we, so secular AA is the term to look for if somebody
International Conference of Secular AA.
Okay.
And one's coming up in October in Orlando, Florida. September. If you or anybody you know is having a problem with the God Word, Santa Fe has a meeting just for them. And everybody's welcome to our meeting. And we're a very dedicated group. We'll be celebrating a year in April.
Well, my sponsor told me when I got sober back in the 20th century that he said, you're coming into AA in a very interesting time. So this thing is growing and changing and getting looked at from angles that it probably wasn't being regarded in the early days. Thank you for coming in. I learned a lot today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.